All right, everybody, welcome back. Mike from the Logical Gamer Show with another quick episode here, and we want to get into the news of the most recent Phil Spencer interview and how Xbox has been focused mainly on third platform, which we know with the recent announcement of the Sony shakeups of their top level CEO announcements, and how Hideki Nishino is going to be the head of Sony Interactive for PlayStation, and how he even said that he's looking to expand profit margins by opening up towards multi-platform, i.e., want to make more money, which is fine. But what a lot of people don't realize is what I've been saying this for a while. As far as the industry goes, when we first started seeing this trend happen, uh, gamers and developers kind of like threw this off and kind of brushed it off, and nobody really paid attention to it. But now it's starting to come to fruition as to why this is happening. Now, let's get into why this is happening first, who's to blame, and then what the future and what this could bring for both Xbox and PlayStation. Now, obviously, one of the reasons this is coming is because studios are not making as much money. We've seen developers laid off, studios closed over the last year. Something like 10 or 11% of developers have been laid off. Huge amounts over the last year. One of the most devastating years for gaming developers in history, from what we know. And because of that, everyone's like, why is this happening? Well, think about it. If games were selling as much as they needed to, studios wouldn't be closing if they were making as much money. And the reason they're not making as much money, as much profit, is there's not just one reason where this thing happened that caused this. There's a whole bunch of reasons, including us gamers. We're one of the reasons. Now, not to say it's our fault, but we're one of the reasons it happened. Just like developers and just like games and prices, technology. Over the years, we've seen the level and the prices of technology go up so much that it's the level of development is insane, with games costing hundreds of millions of dollars. GTA 6 is rumored to cost like $2 billion. Now, granted, they'll make up that money in about 24 hours, but they're they're the exception to the rule. Most of these games costing hundreds of millions of dollars are not making up that much money. I mean, think about it. If you sell a game for 60 dollars and you sell a million copies, that's 60 million bucks. Most of these games are costing more than that, and they're not selling that many copies. With the increase in cost of technology, games cost so much more. They take years to make. 2 years is a short time. That used to take forever, and now it's an extremely short window. Usually games now are upwards of 3 or 4 years in development. That means longer time in development, more developers, more people working on the studio, on the game, with hundreds, sometimes thousands of developers on a game. Now, those guys get salaries, those guys get medical insurance, there's all kinds of marketing. And so, the more people you have over the longer time it takes, it costs more money. But those things aren't going to cause more people to buy the game. No one buys a game. It's like, oh, it took 4 years to make this game instead of 2 years to make another one. I'm gonna buy that game over this game. That's not how it works. I mean, we all know that. But the reason it's taking that long now is multiple reasons, actually, and we're one of them. Now, gamers, if you're honest with yourself and not lie, it doesn't matter what platform you play. If you're only PlayStation, if you're only Nintendo, or if you play all three, Xbox, Nintendo, and PlayStation, it doesn't matter. But if you look at how greedy gamers are, people talk about 60 frames a second and this game's only at 55. The developer sucks. He can't make the system run better. Or this game only took 2 years to make. Or it's only 50 hours long. What am I supposed to do in a game that's 50 hours long? That's insane. Think about it. You can have a lot of fun in a game that's less than that. Look at the original games that came out. Super Mario Brothers. How long did it take you to beat that? Maybe a couple hours, a few days when you were 8 years old when Nintendo first came out, like me. So it all what you think you want in a game, or your level of success that you think a game has, is based solely on what you want, not on what the game did. And that's our fault as gamers. Because if you're going to sit there and say a game's not good if it's not 100 hours long and dedicated 4K steady at 60 frames per second, guess what? It's going to take a hell of a lot of time to make that with a lot of people. And if you want it to take less time, you're going to need a lot more people, which you're still using the same amount of money. More people over less time or less people over more time, you're still spending the same amount of money, whether it comes to salaries or development costs or anything. Now, there might be a little bit of a difference, but it's going to be negligible either way. And when gamers just want all that and the newest and the best and the most expensive thing all the time, and they want it right away, it's not going to help those developers because now these developers have to get the game out super fast or else they get yelled at and trolled all over the online that says, oh, you suck, you can't make a game. If they make it fast, there's not enough time to test it and develop it properly. So you see these bugs because they tried to rush the game out for us. And rather than being like, hey, thanks, I appreciate it, um, take your time, patch it when you can, our gut emotional reaction is to just say, oh, you suck. You can't even make a game that's bug free. Well, pick one. We can't have it all the way, all the time, whatever we want. And that's our issue where we come as gamers. Now, you can't deny that happens. You see it all over the place. Whether you might not be the one personally to do it, I've been guilty of it as well. It doesn't matter what platform it is. I play all four platforms, all consoles and PC. So it doesn't matter to me. But I get that this happens. And if you understand that this happens, you could see where it came from and also kind of project where it's going down the line because let's be honest, I don't see gamers' attitudes changing. We've become the most toxic group of people for the most part all over Twitter. And it's become the part where the silent majority, or excuse me, the silent majority has now become the vocal minority, where the silent majority used to be the people that didn't really care and we just wanted to play games and we didn't really do much. And there was people that complained, and of course they got some, notifications and some attention because they're the squeaky wheel and people hear it and see it and it would get addressed, but then it would just get fluffed off and we would forget about it. But now those people have increased in size and so much because they saw the attention that all they used to get when they were the minority, and now they're the vocal majority. Where the amount of gamers that just don't care and want to play, that's very little. And the issue is those gamers that are complaining, that are now the vocal majority, think what they're doing is the right thing by bashing these developers. You see it all the time. You see it all over Twitter. Like they think they're holding these developers accountable when really you're just acting like an asshole. And that's what sucks about the gaming industry right now. And we see it happening all the time. And until gamers stop that and trying to bash developers for everything they do, it's not going to change. Because if you bash a developer for taking too long to make a game, it's going to take too long and they're not going to make as much money because it's going to take so long to make and the studio is going to have to close. If you bash them for making a game too quickly and now all of a sudden it has bugs because they didn't have time to test it because they had to get all your top technology in such a short amount of time, and you complain them about the game having bugs or having to fix something, that's going to cause people not to buy it and they're going to have to go out of business. So you have to understand or we have to understand as gamers that this is all part of the process. And if you try to say this happened, that X happens, that means Y, it's only going to shut down the future of games for development. And we see that now. I've been saying this since the beginning, since it started, that if this continues to go, more studios are going to close, more game developers are going to lose their jobs, and you're going to see a change in the industry, and we're already seeing it. Studios have closed. As I said, it was the most devastating year this past year, 2024, the end of 23 to 24, into 25 now. It's still happening. For game developers, 11% of the force or something like that's been laid off. And you see and you hear these developers starting to talk about how they have to get away from like these major AAA games, hundreds of hours of content. And I've been saying that forever. Just go back to our Twitter account, my personal account, the Gamer Show account. You can see it all over now that these huge 4-year long AAA games 4K, 60 frames a second, 4 years of development. It's not needed anymore. Everything now gamers complain about is either gameplay or story. As long as you have a good story, that's the most important thing gamers want. And for me, it is. And even if you look at all the surveys, the most recent ones, something like 25 or 35% of the people that respond want story. And the rest is all less than that. Some combat, some multiplayer accessibility, some everything else. But the huge majority of it is story. Where if it's not a captivating game, they're not going to like it. Now, you don't need a 400-hour game to have a captivating story. Some of the best games I've ever played. I mean, Life is Strange is the best game I've ever played, bar none, and that's like a 12-hour game over 5 episodes. So, I mean, to me, no game is ever going to beat that. Of course, there's different genres that take on different aspects of gameplay, but overall, that's the best game I've ever played. You could take games like Child of Light from Ubisoft. It's like an 8-hour game. It's one of the best narratives I've ever played. Even Valiant Hearts, another Ubisoft game. There's hardly any talking in that game. It's just grunting sounds. But the narrative of what the gameplay is set on and the story of where the game is set in World War One France, it's it's an amazing story. You see streamers, they're bawling their eyes out at the end of the game. Other games, depends. Sports games, racing games. It all depends on not just what fan of what genre you are, but what these developers do with the time they have. Why can't you make a solid AA game like Ubisoft did with a smaller Assassin's Creed Mirage? It took 12 to 15 hours to beat, 20 if you want to do an entire 100% completion, or even if you want to do a smaller AA game like Assassin's Creed Chronicles or Max and the Curse of Brotherhood or these smaller games that come out on Game Pass by independent developers. Our most recent game that we just did now, the review, Eternal Strands, one of the best games I've played in a while. Top peak of its genre, I said in the review. The creative freedom that the Yellow Brick Studios gave to us as players, where you can climb anything, the way physics are involved, not just in combat, but in weather and spells, and how a sunny day will melt ice faster than at nighttime if you're playing overnight. Those things aren't seen anymore. And that game will take about 20 hours to beat everything, maybe 30 if you go for 100% completion with all the side quests. And I'm just about there now. So there's so much that you could do, and those games cost a lot less. They don't need to be 4K 60 frames per second. I mean, South of Midnight coming out on Xbox is going to be on PlayStation and Game Pass on Xbox, and that uses stop motion animation. Okay? A lot of people don't like it because it bothers them, but that's one of the cheapest forms of animation to use. And it looks great. It looks actually incredible. If you told me they were going to make a game in 2025 using stop motion animation, I would have laughed you out the house. But it is, and it looks great. You could turn it off. A lot of people don't like it, but it's still there, and they use that trying to save money. Clair Obscur Expedition 33, another game, turn-based role-playing game, but you can actually choose to move your character in a turn-based form to avoid attacks. Could never do that before. Something else. It's a shorter game. Going to take around 20 to 30 hours to beat, they said, the studio. So all these things coming out is where we have to focus. And if you don't want games to go multi-platform, it's where you're going to have to be. Because if you want games to be exclusives on Xbox or PlayStation or Zelda or Mario on Nintendo, but you want a game that's going to be 400 hours long in 4K 60 frames per second, it's not going to happen nowadays. Those days are over. We're at the point of technology now where technology is so advanced and it's so expensive that we don't see those leaps and bounds advancement in technology. You're not going from 8-bit to 64-bit, from Super Nintendo to Nintendo 64 in 10 years. You're not going to see 8 times the level of technology. We're not going to think about it. Right now, it's been about 5-6 years since Xbox Series and PS5 have come out. 8 years ago, the consoles now are not 8 times better than they were 8 years ago. Not even close. There's actually arguments where games 8 years ago look better than now. That never would have happened from 90 to 98 with all these consoles, or even 15 years ago, let alone 30 years ago. So our technology is so advanced that we can't possibly advance that level of exponential advancement that we used to do 30 years ago. So we need to start realizing that we can't keep getting this exponential increase and start realizing that we have to make the most out of what we have. Now, in order to do that, like I've been saying, we need to go back to double A games. We need to go back to more double A games, shorter games, better story, more intriguing combat. And if you do that, that will help maintain exclusives because they'll cost less to make. Odds are it'll still sell the same amount of copies. I mean, like, I don't know about you guys, but it's not like I'm going to not buy a game because it didn't take 3 years and it's 4K 60 frames per second, but it took a year and a half and it's steady 30 and it could be, you know, 1080p or maybe 4K depending on what it is in a different setting, and it's going to take me 20 hours to beat the game instead of 250 role-playing Elder Scrolls type of game. I don't care. I just want a good game. As you see, we just gave Eternal Strands a 9. Corridon, Joe just gave it a 7, and it's a great game too. New level of gameplay type setup in the Diablo setup. So when you want games to stay with the advancement of technology, with what you want, we have to realize how we need to maintain and temper our wants and our needs as gamers with what's available to the developers. And we've forgotten that because we're so used to getting the next big thing, the next big thing, the next big thing, and we get that dopamine feed that we forget that we're not the ones making the game. The developers have to feed us. And if it's not possible to feed our desires because what we want isn't available with the combination of price and technology, it's going to make them fail. And if we don't change what we want, the more people of those developers will fail, and the more the gaming industry will have to change. And if that's the case, we can't complain that it's changing if we played a huge part in it. Now, where that can go from here, it all depends. Xbox and PlayStation just recently announced that they're going to try to open up with Hideki Nishino, the new with their recent shakeup rather of CEOs for Sony Interactive Entertainment, that they're going to look to expand their profit margins, make more money. But that they just announced that, we kind of know where they'll go based on what Xbox is doing. But I really want to focus on Xbox now, especially with Phil Spencer's most recent interview a few days ago with Destin Legary. Now, he said that obviously he doesn't want to gatekeep all of their games on Xbox, and more games will multi-platform, but there also will be some games that remain only available on Xbox. And they're also committed to the hardware issue. Now, this is the confusing aspect of where this can go with Xbox. Now, Xbox right now, Xbox One got blown out of the water as far as console sales goes, not overall quality of games. Numbers of sales goes by PS4. And the PS5 sales are tracking ahead of PS4, and the Xbox Series consoles are tracking behind Xbox One. So that means PS5 is even farther ahead of Xbox Series than PS4 was to Xbox One as far as console sales goes. Xbox has seen this. They've known this for a while. This is why they've stopped announcing Xbox console sales numbers and instead have announced Game Pass subscribers and player engagements. You see PlayStation announced they sell millions, however many millions of PS5 consoles. Xbox announces that Game Pass has grown by 5 million subscribers. Okay, that's great. 5 million subscribers times $15 a month adds up. 75 million more dollars a month that they get. That adds up a lot over the course of the year. Now, Xbox has realized this. They realized a long time ago when Phil Spencer took over 10 years ago as CEO of Xbox Gaming that this is where Xbox was going. They saw their console sales going down and they knew they had to get a head start on it. So that's why Game Pass was huge when it started. They knew they would maybe take a little bit of a hit at first until their game subscribers picked up. Now they have something like 35 million subscribers. I think their most recent numbers were. Game Pass Ultimate went up. Xbox, or Microsoft rather, is making about $400 million a month just from Game Pass subs. It's a hell of a lot of money. You're looking at 4 to 5 based on how many people get it for what price if you buy some off CD keys or whether $4 to $5 billion a year just on subs. Clearly, Xbox Game Pass is profitable because there's no way they spend more money than that on games. It's not possible. We know Microsoft pays developers to make games. No one's going to say, or no one rational person thinks that Microsoft spends more than $4 billion a year paying developers. If you did, there'd be an outcry because it doesn't make sense. It's not logical to actually even think that. So clearly they're making money. That's why they're able to buy Activision and they want to buy all these other studios. But where are you going to go from there if you're Xbox? And why are you making a hardware unit? That's the one question. Now think about it. And I think the most recent interview with Phil gives us an idea as to why. If you know your console sales are down and you want to increase your Game Pass subs, how are you going to do that if they're not going to buy your console? You get it on any screen possible. So now you can play Game Pass on your smart TV. You can have Game Pass just on your phone and play it, on your tablet, on your console, of course, if you have one, you know, anywhere you want, on your computer. If you just want to spend, you can have a Xbox Game Pass on your computer if you don't want to just have PC Game Pass. So you could have everything now. That's why this is an Xbox marketing scheme, not scam, excuse me. Scheme is smart from the fact of they know they were low on sales, so they're trying to get a head start and get Xbox Game Pass on as many platforms as possible. Now, it's not going to be on other consoles, and I'll tell you why. Because if you try to get Xbox Game Pass on as many screens as possible, you do this because, like we said, you know you're losing the console sales war. So, why are you still going to make a console? A couple reasons. One is because, if you think about it, remote play. Right now, if you do not own an Xbox console, but you're a Game Pass Ultimate subscriber, you can only play the games that are on Game Pass, and you could stream those games somewhere else. You could play them online. You could do whatever you want. You could play multiplayer. You could do anything, but you don't need a console to do that. You have to be an Ultimate subscriber to play online and all those things. But you can only play the games that are in Game Pass, and some of those are day one Microsoft games, but other games aren't. Like Eternal Strands right now is on Game Pass, but if you wanted to play Corridon, the game Joe just played, you couldn't. You'd have to play a game that you own. Now, you could buy a game online, but my thing is, why would you buy a game if you don't own a console just so you could stream your game anywhere else? That doesn't make sense. So now remote play allows you to play all your games that you own on Game Pass. Most of them now. There's like a list of like 40 games. Pretty soon all of them will be available to play. So that's going to allow you to own your console, buy games. You could play it on your console as well as anywhere else. And day one games for Xbox Game Pass are still going to be day one and you could play them. But the really only reason to own a hardware would be to play all the games you own. Because no one's going to buy a game if they don't own a console. So you're going to be stuck with, now you could, but I think Microsoft knows that, so most people won't. So they're making that console. So we'll buy the console, download the games, because you have the fact of people that just are going to stick with console, and that's probably going to be a majority of the players anyway. And with the advent of most people going towards physical, they're going to, excuse me, towards digital from physical, is changing drastically. It's like doubling year over year. That we know that the ability to have this console is what players want the most. So there's a huge back and forth here between what Microsoft is doing and what players want. You guys understand that? It seems obvious to me. I mean, I hope you guys get it. But what I think Microsoft is doing here is looking towards the future, realizing they lost a console war, getting Game Pass on as many screens as possible, while also keeping console for those who need it, for those that want console to play it, and be able to play remote play and buy games that they want and play whenever they want over the air, over cloud gaming, because that's a huge feature, and they know while that may go down in popularity over the years, the people that want it are still going to love it and it's still going to be important. So they're still going to have to focus on that. Because if they took that away, that would lose so many more subscribers than they would get, that would have a negative impact. So it's better off to make a console and maybe lose some money where you're subsidized by software, as opposed to not making a console and having all those other people cancel and losing that monthly revenue stream. Because even if they do that, they'd be making less money overall by that than if they do by making a console and losing some by subsidized software. Now, the other thing is a lot of people crapped all over Microsoft by going multi-platform. Said it was only 4 games at first with Pentiment and Grounded and Sea of Thieves, and now all these other games coming out going multi-platform. But if you look at the most recent report from 2 days ago, the from December, Microsoft is now the largest video game publisher in the world. They beat out EA. I think EA did like $340 million, and Microsoft did 465 million, I think it was, just in December. But the kicker is 64% of the money spent on Microsoft games was on the PlayStation console. So that means PlayStation, the amount of money for PlayStation users spent double the amount of money on Microsoft games than Xbox did on Microsoft games, which makes sense. Now think about it. Microsoft going multi-platform means they just tripled their money. They tripled their monthly income by going multi-platform. Sony isn't stupid. Say what you want. They're not very consumer friendly when it comes to their games and releasing them on PC and updates and gatekeeping different features. They're not stupid. They're frugal, but they're not stupid. This is why they don't want to release their games day and date on like God of War on PS Plus, like Microsoft does on Xbox Game Pass. But when you're talking about triple your money every month, that's going to make their ears perk up. And that's exactly why, because the newest CEO said that they're going to want to expand into multi-platform. They're going to look to this too. Maybe they put God, I don't know, are they going to put God of War on Xbox? Maybe that's one that they don't. Maybe that they come out with a smaller third parties type of game, like Stellar Blade. Maybe Stellar Blade, those type of games. Or Phantom Blade Zero, that's third party. These type of games that come out that aren't necessarily Sony Game Studios, like God of War or Gran Turismo or something, that only come out on PlayStation. Maybe they'll start coming out on Xbox or Nintendo or vice versa. I don't see any of them doing what Nintendo does and just locking them down because Nintendo's more popular. But when you talk about tripling money, it's bound to happen. And if you're mad of saying, why am I even buying a console anymore? Or why am I buying a PlayStation? Because you were crapping on Xbox, or haha, PlayStation, you're making fun of us. Now you're doing the same thing. Remember what I said about 15 minutes ago. It's our fault that this is happening. Because if we didn't crap all over developers, they'd be making more money and they wouldn't have to do this. Now, developers didn't have to listen to us. I know they could have done their own thing. But again, the people don't want to hear complaints. So the best way to shut up complaints is to just, unfortunately, a lot of times people think, is to just do what the people complaining want them to do. But unfortunately, that doesn't make them stop. All it does is empower the people that are complaining by making them think they can complain more and get what they want more. We see it in politics, we see it in religion and social issues and gaming, TV, everything, what it is. Movie studios, everything. It's not someone complains, they get what they want. They don't say, "Oh, okay, cool." No. Next time they want what they want, they complain about that because it worked last time. They're just going to complain again. And unfortunately, developers listen to it because they're human. They want to make money. They also don't want to be bothered. And I get it, which is why this is called the Logical Gamer Show, not just Bob's show, because we talk about these things in a logical and rational approach. You got to figure everything out. You got to accept the fact that we're partly to blame. And if not, it's only going to make it worse in your own head because you're the one complaining about this, but yet you don't realize your actions are the one that's causing it. So where do you think Xbox and PlayStation are going to go? Let us know. Let us know below in the comments. Let us know what you think. But again, we have to try to look into where this is going. Is Xbox going to come out with this handheld? To me, the best possible course of action for Xbox as far as their new console is going to go, because you already know that they're committed to a new console, is, and we've heard this mentioned in rumors before, but it makes sense, is that the next Xbox console will in some way integrate the Steam store and Epic Game Store. Because now you're going to have like a PC that's also an Xbox console at once. Now, granted, if you have a gaming PC, you kind of already have that because you can have Steam, you can have the Epic Game Store, and you could play Xbox Game Pass on it. You just sign up and pay your monthly thing and go on PC Game Pass, go to xbox.com/play and play all your games. And if you have a console, you could play your games on there now online or over the air, over cloud gaming, the ones that are available on it. If not, you're stuck with just Game Pass. But this new console, again, how many gaming PCs now have a, or most of them are laptops, how many of those have a disk drive that you can play a physical game? Not many of them, especially with gaming PCs where over 99%, I think it's like 99.3% of gaming purchases are digital. So a lot of these things don't even need a disk drive, especially when it's a laptop. Desktops, yeah, obviously, because they just throw them in there, but a lot of them don't. And if you're going to create a console that has a disk drive and a huge uh, SSD that can multiple terabytes of games, 1, 2, maybe 4 terabytes, whatever it is, delete the games, reinstall them when you need. With the Epic Game Store and Steam Store on there, it's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper than a gaming PC. Say the newest console, say that costs $600. Okay, the Xbox Series X cost $499 when it first came out. Now say this new one costs $599, just to make it up, right? $600. Still a hell of a lot cheaper than a gaming PC to get you the quality that you're going to want. And even if it's slightly less than the top end gaming quality on a PC, it's still going to be more than what you need. I mean, let's be honest. You put 60 frames a second next to a screen that's 50 frames per second, you can't tell the difference. The human eye cannot tell the difference. It's hardly noticeable to tell the difference between 60 and 30. Most people don't. I mean, you just hear it and you think it and you say it because it's the most common thing going, and it's like the fruit of the month, flavor of the month. But you can't really tell. And I think that's where Xbox is going to go. Sony will follow suit in some way or form afterward, closer, since they're a little bit further behind. But I think now, unless we change it, we're going to see that Xbox is going to have a handheld. You can play anywhere, so every time you buy a game, you have it licensed anywhere. Will Microsoft do something crazy and drop their paywall for multiplayer? After all, they're tripling their money. They're getting, instead of, they're doubling the money they get from PlayStation. 64%, nearly 2/3 of the money that they make is from PlayStation. That means 1/3 of the money is from their own Xbox. They're tripling their money every month. You could subsidize Microsoft Xbox Game Pass multiplayer now. You won't need Game Pass Ultimate to play multiplayer. Maybe you can use that just for remote play or whatever it is. Remove the multiplayer feature away. That would be huge because that would set you apart from PlayStation. PlayStation requires PS Plus to play online, just like Xbox and Nintendo require Nintendo Switch Online to play online. But no one's making that much money now. No one's making almost $500 million a month with money from other platforms. So maybe that's something Microsoft does. But right now it looks like Xbox is focused on developing their handheld. Their next Xbox console is going to be more of a PC with Xbox features than an Xbox with PC features in order to get all the scalability and the power that Phil says he wants. You might see some little features like paywall multiplayer removed, and Sony is going to come up and kind of try to follow suit a little bit farther ahead. I don't think Microsoft puts Game Pass on other platforms because to do that will completely eliminate the strategy of getting Game Pass and buying the console. Because if you already own a PlayStation console or a Nintendo console, and you're going to say, fuck it, I don't need to buy a new Xbox console because I'm just going to play Game Pass games and I'll download the app on my PS5 and Nintendo Switch 2. Okay, But so where does Xbox get that money from? What benefit do they have from making a console? What 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 level of, excitement does it bring to players for them to buy your console if they can get the main feature of that console on somewhere else? So that's going to be the thing they have to gatekeep. They might put other games on other platforms, but it's not going to be with Game Pass. You're going to have to buy it on other platforms, which is fine because think about it. That's why they're making double the money. If you're going to play Call of Duty on PlayStation, you have to buy it, but it's free on Xbox. That's why they made double the money. Now, if all those players on Xbox bought it, they might make more money, but they don't need to make that much money because they're making that money from subs. Because if 35 million people are not playing Call of Duty every month on Xbox, but there's 35 million subs on Xbox. So the people that aren't playing Call of Duty, they're still getting the money from them as subs, whether they don't play or they just play little 2D platformer games, or it doesn't matter. They're still getting their $20 a month. So that's why they can afford to do this and subsidize everything. So it is an interesting marketing scheme that Xbox and Microsoft are doing. But we see now what the future is with Microsoft. They are officially third party. Xbox is really a logo more than a brand at this point. And they're changing everything. They're going to be a publisher with a console. And the only way that console can succeed is to have a unique feature. Something like Dreamcast and Saturn didn't have that feature, and that's why those consoles failed. Microsoft obviously is too big to let Xbox fail because they're smart enough to have their own features, and they saw this way ahead of time, which is when Phil was on stage and he announced at E3 Xbox Game Pass initially and all these 100 games to play. So let us know what you think below, where they're going to come. Again, thanks for watching, like, and subscribe, and tune into our other reviews that we just posted, or other how-to videos on Eternal Strands and Corridon. Joe and I are going to be back pretty soon on our next episode. Follow us on X at the Logical Gamer Show as well. Like and subscribe. Appreciate everything. Tune in next time. Let us know what you think below in the comments. Take it easy, everybody.